Howdy ho, H2Hos, Roller Bros, and Olivia Maries alike. I'm your guide, Q. Welcome back to r/Let's Not Meet. Today, we've got a more diverse collection of stories. One of them is a camp story, a kidnapping story, and we also have a story of a very, very strange teacher. So let's just get into the creeps. Mark from Sleepaway Camp. This happened a few years ago when I was 12 years old at Sleepaway Camp for the first time. My name is Jacob, it's important later on. I didn't know anyone going into the camp, but I made friends very quickly. One of my bunkmates named Mark was a little off, and while everyone in our bunk was friendly with each other, he was somewhat isolated from the rest of us. I was really the only one who started conversations with Mark, and I tried to include him in everything, as I've always been taught to never leave anyone out. The sleepaway camp I went to was very modern and allowed people to bring their tablets and iPods, just not phones. I didn't bring any electronics, but Mark had an iPad. Mark would not let anyone touch his iPad except for me. He would let me play games on his iPad. One night when Mark was in the shower, he lent me his iPad to play Angry Birds. I was in the middle of launching birds at green pigs when an alarm started to go off. He had set a reminder to shower, but I guess he didn't need it. I tried to shut the alarm off and accidentally clicked on it and went into the alarm app. My heart sank when I saw an alarm set for 2 a.m. that said, "Play with sleeping Jacob." Mark slept with headphones in, so only he would wake up from that alarm. I didn't say anything about it because I thought I could have read it wrong and that he would get mad at me and no longer let me play on his iPad. Stupid, I know. That night, I couldn't fall asleep. I just laid awake in bed. Sure enough, a few hours into the night, I heard a rustling 2 beds down. Mark got up and walked over to my bed. To this day, I will never remember the creepy moonlit smile on his face as he stared over at me. He began walking to the side of my bed right near my face and started to stroke my hair. I immediately jumped up and yelled, "What are you doing?" waking most of the cabin and probably the cabins next door to me. Mark said, "I just wanted to see if you were awake, jeez." I yelled at him, but most of my counselors dismissed it as me being paranoid. Then I told one of my counselors about the alarm. He forced Mark to open up his iPad, and there was the alarm. Mark spent the next day doing activities with us as normal, but he spent the night sleeping in the infirmary. After that night, I never saw him again, but I know that he lives within 30 minutes of me, so Mark, let's not meet. Okay, I definitely cannot blame the author of this story for being scared of Mark. If that had happened to me, I would be fearful of Mark for the rest of my life, just because when stuff happens to you when you're a kid like that, it doesn't really go away. But everybody in this situation is a kid, so I really hope that Mark can get some counseling, like with a therapist, and be explained why that isn't okay, and maybe get down to some of the reasons behind him wanting to do that, and just get to an understanding that he can't do that to unsuspecting people. A stranger lured me to her van when I was 4. I remember this rather clearly even though I was young. I was on a field trip to a popular public park with my daycare. It wasn't unusual for adults to go to this park by themselves, it was super decked out. There was a train, vendors, sometimes concerts or clowns, so it wasn't only a playground. Anyway, I was always the awkward kid, so I wasn't playing with the other daycare kids. Instead, I was sitting quietly off to the side, just daydreaming as I often opted to do. This made me an easy target since I was just chilling solo. There were others around, by the way, like I wasn't secluded, I was just doing my own thing. My mom had talked to me about stranger danger before, but I had it in my head that strangers were scary, so I didn't actually know what a stranger was at the time, I just knew they were bad people. This woman walked up to me with a camera in her hands. She complimented my t-shirt, which had a cat photo on the front, and told me she worked for a cat magazine and thought I would be a good model for it. Naturally, I was totally down for the prospect. My daycare teachers and the other kids didn't notice I was talking to a random girl. She asked me questions like my address, where my mom works, my mother's phone number, my social security. I couldn't really answer most of her questions because I was 4 years old. Anyway, it didn't deter her. She got my name and age, everything I did know, I told her when she asked. She was super nice as I remember, and after I answered her questions, she took a picture of me. After the picture was taken, she said she needed to go to her car to grab something. Can't recall what or why I had to go with her according to her story, but I got up and went with her. I remember holding her hand. She was literally unlocking her van when my daycare teacher came running through the parking lot and screaming at her. Like bloody murder screaming. "Get the hell away from her! I'm calling the police! Help! She's kidnapping my kid!" The whole 9 yards. The woman seemingly forgot about me because she hopped into her car and drove off in a snap, leaving me behind. I remember I was pissed at my daycare teacher because I probably wouldn't be in the cat magazine after she'd scared her off. I was crying. The daycare lady was consoling me, saying that it was okay, she left, I'm safe, but I was crying because I couldn't be in her magazine. My mom picked me up and took me to the police station where I was asked about the incident. They never caught her to my knowledge, like I didn't know her name or anything. I remember my mom was irritated because the best I could do for her description was long brown hair and jeans. Anyway, that's how I was almost kidnapped and how I was pissed at my rescuer. Let me just say, it's incredibly creepy how effective the kidnapper's strategy was, that the kid was actually mad that they couldn't get into that van and go to take pictures for this magazine. Like, that creeps me out beyond belief, and I'm so happy that this daycare worker, obviously I'm very happy that the daycare worker caught on to it and was able to yell and get the lady to drive away, but I can't help but feel like she should have been paying closer attention to all of the kids. Like, I understand that everybody has an off day, but when you're taking kids out to a field trip where there's going to be adults around and random people around like this, I feel like you need to be on your best game. Like, you need to be paying attention extra. So, like, it does disappoint me a little bit that she wasn't doing that, but luckily, everything worked out for the best. This one is insanely creepy, but I'm not going to read the title because it will give away the finish to the story. So this process happened just a few months ago, so it shouldn't be too hard to find. So at the start of the year, we were introduced to our teachers, and all of them were good teachers except Mrs. C. So we went through classes, and in each we go through those cheesy beginning of the year introductions. It was quickly clear that her class wouldn't be a normal health class, as evidenced by the fact that during her introduction, she went off about how terrible her divorced husband was. So classes started picking up, and her insecurities somehow kept making it into lectures. One day, a few weeks into school, she just stopped showing up to class. You know, her job, consistently. Now at this point, everyone was cutting her some slack because she was a single mom, but it just got worse. We would have to do whole units from a workbook with improvised substitutes who were actually most of the time school staff with no idea what they were doing. This culminated when Mrs. C missed 2 weeks of school for no apparent reason. Most of the class could see her mental deterioration. Me and some friends in class started noticing some form of distress from Mrs. C. More and more stuff about her personal life would leak into lectures when she was there. Suddenly it came to a head. She suddenly became distant and developed a tough shell around her. Mrs. C actually started coming to class consistently too. She started bringing her kids closer to toddlers but still to class. I have a hunch that she started doing this to help justify her inaction to her employees. One day she just sort of broke down in class about how horrible her husband was not taking equal responsibility for their kids. It was a bad joke at this point. How long would Mrs. C last before being fired? Unluckily for us, it was too long. We just sort of endured lectures from this mentally unstable woman. Mind you, she was doing a fine job at suppressing traits associated with that around other school employees. One day we come in and she wasn't in class, breaking her streak of actually coming. We then got our answer of how long she would last. A counselor walked into the room. Everyone knew what was up. She was gone. What had gone down exactly? She walked into her ex-husband's house on the Sunday before that class period. Her excuse to her ex was to deliver cold medicine to her kids. After threatening to call the cops after her home invasion, she locked herself in the bathroom. She called the cops and unlocked the door to the bathroom. She then walked over to her coat, pulled out a gun, and opened fire on her ex's girlfriend, killing her. Mrs. C was then pinned until the cops showed up. That wasn't her first offense either. Suspiciously close to the time when she had hardly showed up to her job, she had several assault charges against her that she somehow managed to keep secret to her job as a teacher. Weirdly enough, students who didn't have her as a teacher didn't take it seriously. It took less than 30 minutes after that info was made public to the students in general for them to make a meme page about the incident. Weird how that worked. It immediately got taken down. Anyway, mentally unstable teacher who committed aggravated murder and let your insecurities leak into your teaching, let's not meet again. Okay, let me just start off by saying that this is so creepy, and the way that it built up with her being like unstable in class and missing class and letting her personal life leak into lectures, and then she ends up like murdering her ex-husband's new girlfriend, like that is so creepy. Having said that, I'm not sure if this story is 100% true, because the whole thing about having several assault charges against her that were new, that happened when she was missing class and when she was currently teaching, like Like, I just don't think that there's any way that the police wouldn't communicate with the school that she worked at. Like, she's on the record as a teacher, she's on the record as having gone to jail for assault. I don't think those two things mix well together, and I don't think that she would be able to continue teaching with that being on record. I don't think there's any way that nobody would have found out, is what I'm trying to say. But for those of you who might be more familiar with the law or your ability for people to not find out about assault charges, let me know if I'm off base here. The whole thing about the meme page is strange, but I do totally believe that. I remember when I was in middle school, an employee at the school did die while we were there, and everybody found out like the morning before like a random day of class, and some kids were talking about it on the bus, and there was this one kid who was like, oh no, this is a good thing. I'm like happy that he's dead. Like, we don't have to deal with this whatever anymore. And like after a little while he realized that that was in poor taste, and he actually felt really, really bad about it. But sometimes after stuff like this happens, people do take a strange humorous approach, so I do believe that, and I just wanted to give my own personal anecdote. But anyway, if you want to send me your own stories about any topic we cover on this channel, hit me up at CueSubs@gmail.com. That's CueSubs@gmail.com. You can find that linked in the description down below, alongside my Twitter, my Instagram, and Amazon affiliate links for all of my equipment. I will see you guys very soon. Be safe out there. Be very careful. Make sure you're drinking more water. Skate on to the best of your abilities. And I hope you have an absolutely wonderful, safe day.